Alright, hello everybody.
Hello.
We're back for more eating, which, it's probably frustrating sitting on the opposite end and watching other people eat.
I'm a little closer to it for Instagram.
Again, my name is Phil. I'm Director of Preservation here at Seed Savers Exchange.
And I'm Stefan. I'm the Evaluation and Trials Manager.
And last week, or was it last week?
A couple weeks ago,
I think, before Thanksgiving, we did potatoes. Today we got dry beans, which is a perfect winter food. Nice, hearty, and they keep a long time. And you can have all different types of beans that you can keep and cook throughout the year, really. I've had dry beans hanging out on my counter and in the cabinet for quite a while, and they cooked up just fine. So, a little bit about the bean collection we have here at Seed Savers Exchange. We have over 5,500 bean varieties in the collection, and that is a lot, and we continue to get more donations every year. We actually just got unsolicited donation in the mail a couple weeks ago with a really great story about a bean. But yeah, over 5,500 bean varieties, and a good chunk of that collection came to Seed Savers Exchange in about 1980, 1981 from a man whose name is John Withey. And we have a really great exhibit on our website under resources. It's the John Withey exhibit. John Withey was a medical photographer, but he was out to look for the bean that I believe his mother used to make baked beans with. And he ended up finding that bean, and he found approximately 1,200 other beans and donated them all to the Seed Savers Exchange. He had this huge network of bean growers and people that were looking for beans. And for people that may remember, he was there was a show back in the day, a game show, I think it was called To Tell the Truth, where he had 3 panelists, and the celebrities on the show had to guess the person with the right story, and John Withey was actually on that game show. And a couple years ago, we connected with his daughter or granddaughter, I can't remember which one it was, and she sent us in the DVD with the clip of his dad on that show, and it was funny, and watching it and just thinking, oh my gosh, how did somebody actually hear about John Withey to get him on this game show? And one of the celebrities actually picked John correctly, because when John was on that game show, he made a bold statement that said that nowadays nobody in the Boston area knew how to make Boston baked beans anymore compared to what they used to, where they used to take a pot and bury it in the ground and cook them that way. So I think the celebrity said there's no way anybody in their mind would say that if they weren't the actual real John Withey bean man. So just kind of funny.
And this is a book that John Withey wrote. It's called Growing and Cooking Beans. It's basically a recipe book. It's just got hundreds of recipes of different types of beans and how to cook those different types.
And how to bury your beans in the ground and all that, and make them the right way.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, I just want to highlight a couple other. Okay. So some of you might be familiar with a guy named Steve Sando. He lives out in California in the Napa Valley, and he is just a really passionate bean enthusiast. And he's written several books.
Several, yeah. Rancho Gordo is his company. Started back in the 70s, and we have a nice little profile of him on another exhibit we have, The Rise of Heirloom Seeds.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the other one. Heirloom beans from Steve.
Also really great recipes in there, and he's highlights his favorite heirloom beans. He actually acquired. He got his start by getting beans from Seed Savers Exchange. So
yeah.
So yeah, we've got about 5,500 accessions of beans in the collection, and it's one of our biggest collections, probably second to tomatoes. We've got some just beautiful beans. I'm always just in awe of some of the different bean colors and patterns and shapes and sizes that we grow every year.
How many do you typically grow for eval in a year?
So we typically grow, I would say, between 50 and 70 beans for evaluation every year. This year was, I think, in 55 or something like that. But all the beans that we're going to be tasting today were grown for evaluation, and there are 8 of them. So things that we look for when we're evaluating beans, of course not all the beans that we grow are used as dry beans. A lot of them are green beans, or wax beans, or fresh shelling beans, but a lot of them are dry beans. And the dry beans just have a lot of different qualities to them that makes each one of them unique. And that's one of my favorite things about tasting them, is that they're so charismatic in their flavor and their texture. So each variety is unique and different, and they lend themselves to different cooking styles and recipes really well. Unfortunately, because we grow so many beans here on the farm every year, we can't cook with them in the styles or recipes that they're necessarily best suited for. We end up actually just boiling them, which is how we taste evaluate most things. Just unadulterated, don't add anything, we just taste them for what they are.
Not even a speck of salt in these.
Not even salt in these.
I remember a couple years ago we had an employee, and Stefan and I were making these beans, and he's like, "What? He didn't put any salt in the water?" Like, nope.
No.
He said, but it enhances the flavor.
It does enhance the flavor, yeah. Yeah, so beans are just a really nutritious, a really great food. I personally eat a lot of beans because we grow so many of them here on the farm. But beans have a lot of fiber, they have a lot of protein, they don't have a lot of like sugars or carbohydrates, so they're a really good food for people with diabetes, or if you don't want your blood sugar to spike. So I love beans, and I'm excited about doing this tasting. These varieties we haven't tasted yet,
Yeah.
so we'll be doing that for the first time.
So yeah, these were harvested at the end of the season in the dry stage. So the pods were basically brown and brittle, and the seeds were hard. If anybody is familiar with shelling beans, you can get a good shelling bean just before the pods start to brown up and get brittle and crispy. Sometimes you hear horticultural bean being thrown around as well. Some people use shelling bean. And we do have some varieties in the collection where the donor specifically used them as a shelling bean. If you get them at that stage, they cook up a little bit quicker, but they don't keep. So that's the challenge with the shelling bean. But the flavors tend to be a little bit different as well.
That's one of my favorite ways of cooking beans. It takes 10 minutes to cook them, and they have all the flavor that they would in the dry bean stage.
Yeah. You typically get them when the pods are kind of leathery, and they don't break, but they just kind of like bend a little bit. And if you harvest the seeds, you can kind of dent them with your fingernail a little bit, as opposed to the dry bean stage. They're fully dry; they will last a long time in your pantry or cabinet.
Of course, you don't want to keep them too long because beans that have stored for more than a year, they take longer to cook, and they do lose a little bit of flavor. But
I think the other thing we should mention, we're talking about hard seeded.
Oh yeah. So one kind of interesting characteristic of dry beans is that the different varieties have different thicknesses of seed coats, and so when you soak your dry beans before cooking them, some varieties will actually not absorb the water as readily as others. And so that's one thing that we notice every year when we're doing our taste evaluations, is that certain varieties will just soak up the water. All the beans will swell up really nicely. But then other varieties will only swell up partially or not at all, and they're still hard seeded when you take them out of the water after 6 or 8 hours or whatever your soaking time is. So obviously a good dry bean is one that will swell up really easily, not staying dry seeded. So that's something that we record, and we also include in our variety profiles for the exchange.
Now, you can cook a bean that's hard seeded, but you need to nick it. You need to take a fingernail clipper, or sometimes sandpaper, or even a nail file. You need to break that outer seed coat in order for them to soak up that water. It's actually a dormancy mechanism that beans acquire when they're maturing on the plant. So, but not all beans, like Stephen said, not all beans have that, but some of them do. So, if you're looking for beans and if you're familiar with the yearbook and the exchange that we have, which we're preparing right now, I talked about that last week in the potato video, but again, we list a lot of beans in the exchange, in the yearbook, and a lot of other gardeners and seed stewards list beans as well. It's probably one of the tomatoes and beans are the most popular crop types we have on the exchange. But if you're looking for beans, Stephen says we do make a note that is a hard seeded bean. So just
it's useful information for germinating seeds too.
Yeah, right.
Some beans, when you're trying to germinate them, they just won't swallow up that water, and you have to then nick them to see if they're viable.
So Stephen, what do you look for in a good dry bean? Like, what are the flavors you look for? What's the texture you look for with a good dry bean? So personally, the traits that I like in dry beans are beans that are big. They swell up really nicely. They're plump. The texture is really important to me. So some beans have a really smooth, creamy texture when they're cooked. Some of them are more of a grainy texture, which I don't like at all. But that creaminess, that plumpness makes them taste meaty. Or, I mean, if you're vegetarian, that might not sound great, but it is this sort of dense, just creamy flavor, which I love. And then another quality that I like is a slightly thicker skin. So I think that holds the beans together better when you're cooking them in like a soup or a stew, and I like that texture when they're a little bit more chewy. Yeah. So what do we have here today? We got 8 varieties. We have Swedish Brown, Jacob's Cattle Hepler strain. We have Ottawa Indian. We have Grandma Nendix Succotash. We have Large Royal Kidney, Vera's Cranberry, Bert Dean's Baking Bean, and Cranberry Onondaga. Yeah. So yeah. And I'll show you. I'll take the beans up and show everybody as we're going along, because just nice to see the different colors and patterns. So and let me start with this one right here. Yeah. If we want to start here. So this is Cranberry Onondaga. This is a really special bean. This is one that we are growing here, but I'm not on Instagram. We are growing for a rematriation project that the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network invited us to back in 2018. And this one we grew for rematriation. But I got a little bit of history there. Yeah. So let me just show you the beans here on Facebook, so you can see their. And this bean, the Cranberry Onondaga, came from Instagram people.
Steve McComber, who is a Mohawk elder and faith keeper in Quebec, Canada, and he gathered this variety from a man named Sam Green of the Six Nations Reserve in Canada. And it was donated to us in the mid-1990s.
Yep. So let's try this one. And you'll see, here, let me show you the difference between a cooked bean and a dry bean. So you can see the cooked bean actually loses a little bit of the color. Let me see if I can tilt that in there for everybody. The Instagram people can see. So oftentimes you have these wonderful colors and patterns on the dry bean, but when they get cooked, they lose that.
Yeah, so that pigment is water soluble, and then it fades and it dulls after you cook it. But yeah, so this one is a called a cranberry bean, and it may not be what a typical cranberry bean looks like, but we have so many beans in our collection that they don't all fit nicely into one category, or they're a slight variation on what you think of as being a certain market type. But
very earthy tasting.
mm-hmm.
A little bit thicker skin on that one. So this one held up really well to cooking.
Yeah.
It didn't break down.
Yeah, it is very earthy. I like to use the word musty.
Yeah. Yep. That musty flavor to it.
But it's got a good texture.
Yep. Yeah.
Smooth and creamy.
Yep. Yeah. So that's that one. The next one is called Bert Dean's Baking Bean, which is
so Bert Dean's Baking Bean.
it's just a white bean.
Yeah, it came from John Withy, so the bean collector in New England that Phil was
white
talking
bean.
about earlier. John Withy got the variety in 1977 from a man named Stephen Dean in Maine. And this bean was developed by Stephen's uncle, who was nicknamed Bert, hence the name Bert Dean's Baking Bean. And Bert developed the bean by crossing a soldier bean, a white kidney bean, and a yellow eye bean.
It's a lot of beans.
It's a lot of beans to cross. And he stabilized that cross over a period of years and then grew the variety until he died in 1953 at the age of 87. And when Bert died, he left Stephen 2 5-gallon milk cans of seed.
It's a lot of bean seeds.
He must have really liked this.
Yep.
And this variety we actually grew for production on the farm this year. So we're planning on introducing it in the catalog in the near future.
One interesting thing about this one is that when it came in, the donor said delicately skinned, requires very little soaking or parboiling.
Mm.
So
it definitely has a delicate skin.
yep, it's not as thick as the cranberry.
Nope.
Doesn't have the robust flavor.
No,
And
it
so
doesn't have.
a lot of times when people had these beans, a baking bean, well, they would add ingredients to it to spruce it up a little bit.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
It's very mild.
Mhm.
I think it would pick up, just absorb whatever
Everything,
flavor
yeah.
that you have.
Yeah, so this would be a good one for, again, baking beans.
Yeah, nice and plump.
Yeah.
So
You want to take the next one there?
yeah, so this next one is called Vera's Cranberry. You want to tell the history of it?
Oh, sure, yeah. So here's another cranberry, and you'll see a little bit of difference. Again, it doesn't hold the color and the pattern when it actually gets cooked up. This bean is from the family of Vera Kumper, a lifelong resident in Michigan. She shared the seeds with Seed Savers Exchange in 1991, and she said she grew this variety and after she and her husband Frank were married in 1938. Vera recalled that her own parents grew and saved seeds of this variety during her childhood. She said Vera used to can this variety and also added dried beans to chili. So, very old family heirloom.
Yeah.
Pre-1938 and probably 1800s and more so. So very beautiful, tan with that classic maroon and burgundy stripes and patterns there. So
Yeah.
let's check it out here. Very thick skin on this one, even more so than the Onondaga.
Yeah.
So this one would hold up really well in what Vera cooked with chili.
Yeah.
Boil it, it wouldn't break down very easily at all.
Mm.
Pretty similar flavor, but
Pretty similar. I feel it has less of that earthiness or mustiness.
yep, I agree with that.
And
Yeah.
it has, I'm getting like a little bit of a sweet aftertaste.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can pick that up too. Yep. The next one, large royal kidney bean. So just, a lot of people are familiar with kidney beans. This one cooks up really large. This one is from Jan Bloom, founder of Seeds Bloom Seed Company in Idaho. Shared this variety with Seed Savers Exchange in the 1984 yearbook, saying my 84-year-old neighbor was given this seed at his 1920 wedding and has grown it in Idaho since then. So thank you, Jan, for donating that one to Seed Savers and putting it in the yearbook in the exchange for many, many years. But we'll see. We'll see how kidney beans. Growing up, I hated kidney beans. Did not like them whatsoever.
It's funny. It's probably my least favorite bean too.
But I'm excited to try this one here. Definitely better than the kidney beans I remember growing up eating. My mom would make chili and be like, "Not kidney beans."
I think I don't like them as much because that dark red skin usually gives it some flavor that I don't like.
It's that tannic flavor, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But this I feel like has less of that.
Yeah, this one I'm not picking up on that
No.
classic kidney bean flavor. It's a little more mild.
Yeah.
And again, just maybe a touchness of sweetness to it.
Yeah. Actually, this is really good.
Yeah.
They're huge, actually.
Yep. You can see how they cook up pretty large, even more so than your typical store-bought kidney bean right there. Pretty large. On Instagram, it's about the size of my face right now.
We did have a question. Aren't some beans toxic unless properly cooked, such as red kidney beans? And
No, Stefan and I were just chatting about that before, and we don't know for sure if that's the case. There are some legumes that some people have trouble eating, like fava beans.
Yeah.
But that's specific. That's like a genetic thing.
Yeah.
That people get sick from eating fava beans. But
Yeah.
there are some diets that don't recommend eating beans because they say they have certain toxins in them, and you need to leach them out before you cook them. So, but Stefan's been doing eval on 55 beans for 9 years now.
Yeah.
9 years, and he's never had issues.
Never had any issues.
Yeah.
But it's funny though, I do remember growing up my mom telling me never to eat raw green beans. And I don't know if that has anything to do with toxins or just that they're more difficult to digest when they're raw. But I have heard myths and rumors about that, but
No.
I think it's been thoroughly debunked by people eating beans for hundreds and thousands of years and
Beans.
nobody getting sick. So
Yep.
um,
Yeah. Next one.
yeah, so this
Dawa Indian bean.
we got the succotash one.
Oh, the succotash. Yeah. Granlund Nendick succotash.
Yeah.
Want to take that one out?
Yeah.
This is a beautiful bean. This bean has been in the donor's family for as long as she can remember. Her father got the seeds from his parents, and the donor, her name is Donna, speculates that the variety must have come from a grandmotherly neighbor named Mrs. Nendick because the beans were named for her. Donna donated them to the Seed Savers Exchange in the mid-90s. She said they're really cranberry beans, but of course we call them succotash beans because that's what we use them for, which is really cool to see.
Yeah.
Somebody using them for that classic succotash
Yeah.
dish, which is a kind of a staple of Southern cuisine.
Yes. Well, and New England cuisine
Oh,
too.
New
is,
England, yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't know what succotash is, it's a dish made typically with beans and corn,
Yeah.
just cooked together with some butter
Yep.
or oil.
Yeah. Yeah, and typically I think succotash in the South is made with lima
Yeah.
beans or butter, or
Yeah.
sometimes they call them butter beans.
Yep. Yep.
So to see this as a regular common bean being used is kind of a unique,
Yeah.
cool thing to do.
And of course, it was a dish made by the Indians.
Let's
Yeah.
try it. This is A little bit thicker skin, nice flavor.
Mm. This is the texture that I love.
That creamy texture.
It's really creamy and dense.
No graininess at all.
No.
And they held up really well to cooking. Like there's no hint of this of the beans breaking or shredding or anything like that.
No.
They hold up very well to any type of cooking. No.
This is what I would call a meaty texture.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Really dense.
Yep.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of umami, I would say, in this one.
Savory,
really
yeah.
savory.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I might have to grow this one.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The next one is the Ottawa or Odawa Indian bean, which is another bean that we grew for rematriation a couple years ago. Very beautiful white bean with that yellowy tan eye on the top. It's really quite beautiful. This one came from an indigenous seed keeper in Harbor Springs, Michigan, who shared the seeds with the Wright family of Harbor Springs, and the Wright family grew the beans for 3 generations before sharing them with someone else who actually offered them in the yearbook exchange in the early 90s, where another member picked it up and then shared them, donated them to Seed Savers Exchange. So, long history of being shared. Started with the indigenous seed keeper, gave it to a family, who gave it to another family, who offered it on the exchange. Someone picked it up on the exchange. Someone donated it to Seed Savers Exchange.
Yeah.
So, really cool little bit of a history.
That's how you know a bean is good. If it's passed through many hands and
many hands, yeah, 4 or 5
a lot of people
families.
growing it.
It's good. So let's try this one. They cook up really big.
yeah, it really is a beautiful bean. They're so big.
This has got really nice flavor to it. Skin's not as thick as some of the other ones, but definitely thicker than burnt beans. They broke down a little bit when cooking.
Yeah.
But the flavor,
It's really good.
yeah.
This would be a good bean in a soup. They're just so plump.
Nice texture.
And actually, the pattern is still visible on the cooked beans.
Yep, it's not as vibrant, but it still has that yellowy tan top on the
Yeah.
top of it. Let me grab this one. This is one of my favorite looking beans.
Yeah. So this next one is Jacob's cattle variety or strain called Hepler's, and this came to us through John Withy. And he got the variety from a professor called Elwin Meter. Metter.
Yeah.
At the University of New Hampshire. And
Big. I wanted to get. He passed away, but Elwin was an amazing plant breeder back in the mid 1900s. Was a huge advocate for public breeding programs. Everything he bred, he made it publicly available. He didn't patent anything. He just wanted to breed it and get it out to everybody. We have a lot of Elwin Metter varieties in the collection here, and every year when we the varieties are just amazing.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Yeah.
So.
And they tend to do really well here because they're bred for northern climates.
Yeah.
So we have a short season similar to New Hampshire.
Yep.
But
this one I also want to mention has the name Hepler attached to it, and Billy Hepler, I think, was like 12 or 14. He started his own seed company, and back in the 50s, I believe,
or late 40s, I think.
Yeah, and he was the first one to publish what an heirloom variety actually is in a seed catalog.
Yeah.
And I think he got it from his dad. And he actually defined it as a variety that had been passed down from family or from generation to generation. So not just this old variety, but a heirloom that's been passed down. So it's kind of cool to see it traced back all the way to the first Billy Hepler catalog. And I think Stefan's read it was like the late 40s.
Yeah.
something like that.
I think
Yep.
his company was only around for less than 20 years.
Yeah, it was around long. Yep.
But this is one of the varieties that he offered in his seed catalog during its entire existence.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And this one also came to us by John Withey. So, we got a couple really cool Withey beans here.
Mhm.
1947 and 1962 is when the Billy Hepler catalog was around. So,
Yeah.
let's try it out. Color breaks down
Mhm.
pretty readily. A little bit thicker skin, almost kind of potato-y.
Yeah.
The kind of like that russet potato.
Yeah,
flavor
like a
to it.
starchy, a lighter,
Yep.
fluffier potato.
Yeah.
It's mild flavored though. I don't think it.
Doesn't have any standout robust flavor
No.
like some of these other ones do.
No.
Um,
And it's definitely not as creamy or as dense as some of the other ones we've tried.
Yep.
Um,
So this would be a good
yeah.
one to cook with ingredients to kind of like spruce up the flavor a little bit,
Yeah.
and add some protein to some dishes that you're cooking. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right, last one, Swedish brown, the smallest
Yeah.
bean that we have, and
Yeah.
it's a little bit different because it's more round.
Yeah.
It's very
so
small.
This bean came to us also from John Withey. He got the variety in
The
1977
Instagram people.
from a man named Jim Johnson of Heartland, Wisconsin. And Johnson got his seed from the USDA. So, and the USDA said that the variety originally came from Minnesota. So,
Very small,
Yeah.
kind of an unusual like goldish brown color to it.
yeah, it's not a bean I would take for a dry bean right away, just because it is small
No.
and round.
John Withey said a good producer. This is good for baked beans.
Baked beans. Yeah,
So if John says it's good for baked beans,
you can trust. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they do swell up nicely when you cook them.
Yeah, they do.
Wow, that texture is really good.
Mm-hmm. Tough skin again.
Yeah.
Good for baked beans.
Thick skin, but
Thick
it's
skin.
really dense and creamy.
There's a little bit of sweetness there to it.
Yeah,
Yep. And some savoriness.
yeah. I wasn't sure what to expect of this one, but
Yeah.
I really like the texture.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm.
So I believe all of these should be on the exchange this year.
Mm-hmm.
So you can check that out.
Next year.
2021.
2021.
2021. Yep. Catalog coming out. We list as Heritage Farm, but we may not actually be listing these varieties because if there's somebody else, another seed steward or gardener out there
Mhm.
who is listing the variety, they get we don't list a variety if someone else is listing it. So it might be another seed steward that's listing these in the yearbook or on the exchange. So yeah, we'll post the variety names and results just like what we did last week with the potatoes.
Yeah.
What are some other questions? Let me scroll
Yeah.
through here.
Can you cook beans without soaking them first? You definitely can. I like to soak my beans first because it takes less time then to cook them, and they tend to cook more evenly, more uniformly.
Yeah.
That's the main reason.
Yeah, I know some people say that if you have an Instapot, that you can cook dry beans without soaking them beforehand, or like a pressure cooker or something like that.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, but I've never done it before.
Yeah.
So I don't have personal experience, but a former employee told me that.
Okay.
He said that he's cooked dry beans in an Instapot
Yeah.
in like 20 to 30 minutes, which is pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. Is there a specific lexicon you use when tasting beans?
There isn't a specific lexicon, really. for some crops you can find like flavor wheels where there's really a lexicon. But for beans, I haven't been able to find one, but there are papers that have been published about some of the different flavors, and I just kind of have my own descriptors that I use, and like some common ones would be like nutty or creamy or meaty, or just things that we've talked about here. It's sometimes really challenging to describe dry beans.
Yeah.
And maybe if we use some salt, it would bring out the flavors a little more. I don't know.
Maybe,
but
probably a little bit, but it's still fun to try to. One last question someone had about refried beans. They were wondering what kind of bean would be good for a refried bean. Stefan and I were chatting a little bit about this beforehand, and I'd imagine that most refried beans are probably made from pinto beans. But Stefan mentioned that you probably want to get one that doesn't have that thick skin. So something like a pinto or this Burt Dean's baking bean probably could be used pretty well for refried beans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just also talking about refried beans, it seems like that's more of a modern thing. I mean, among the beans that we've grown here for evaluation, I've never seen a recipe from a donor for refried beans. So I don't know if that means it's not like a traditional dish, if that's more of a modern thing or where it comes from, but we get plenty of recipes for baked beans or soups, stews, even salads I've seen, but refried, I don't know.
For refried beans. So maybe someone out there knows. Put some comments in the Facebook or Instagram post if you know. If you have experience making refried beans, that would be cool. If you're interested in the exchange and the print yearbook, exchange.seedsavers.org. All of the new listings for 2021 we are currently working on. They should go live pretty soon, in the next couple of weeks here. The print yearbook will be printed in January and shipped out at that time. You can actually purchase one. If you are a member of Seed Savers Exchange, you can request one if you're at a certain membership level. Check that out. Like I said, exchange.seedsavers.org. And that's the online version of it. And you can have access to 20,000 varieties of you name it on the exchange. So keep that in mind. We also have our new catalog that should be coming out pretty soon if it hasn't hit mailboxes already. You can go to our website and request one. It's free. So that's just the regular catalog. So check that out. I haven't gone to the main page on our website yet, but there probably might be a link to that right on the request a catalog. So check that out too. And anything else to add about beans?
No, I just encourage you to go to our exchange and discover the hundreds, if not thousands, of varieties that are on there. It's a really cool world.
Yeah.
You should all go out and discover.
The other thing I want to mention is if you've never saved seeds before and you want to get started saving seeds, try beans. They're really easy to save seeds of. You just let them dry down on the plant and you harvest them when the pods are brittle and crisp and dried down, and you'll be good to go. So try it out. It's pretty easy, and you don't have to buy beans for the next year. Yeah. So check it out. Check out our website. Check out the yearbook, the exchange, the regular website, and save your bean seeds when you're growing them for next year. With that, I think that's it.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.